I want to talk about pricing for commercial photography in 2025. There was always the traditional commercial photography rates model that I never really understood that well, which was very much around like different levels of licensing for print versus a billboard versus a this versus a that and all that kind of stuff. And that was when I was coming up in photography, there was a lot of talk about that, like, oh, people don't know how to price their work because someone should pay a lot more if they're going to print it versus they're going to use it on a digital flyer or whatever. I never really got into it because the clients I work with, I just kept it pretty simple. I work in a sort of a little siloed area and I don't know what the rest of the industry is doing these days. Do you know what's happening? Neither do you. Okay. What's your philosophy on pricing?
My philosophy on pricing is really, 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 really overly simple. And just to put a comment on that last bit, this is important to note. There are some commercial photographers who need that complexity in their licensing because of the way that they shoot. So I definitely don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that it's a model that gets applied to the wrong businesses sometimes. If you're a commercial photographer doing like high-end brand work, talking like really, really, really well-known brands, and you're doing their above-the-line hero marketing campaigns, I can definitely appreciate that you're going to spend days and days and days just to get a shot that's going to be the cover shot of that thing. And therefore, to price that accordingly is very difficult. And you may not have regular work, as in like every day you're booked, because these are very big hero projects. Therefore, you're going to rely on things like licensing. So I'm not dismissing the licensing thing. What I will say is that most of us, like 99.9% of us, are not in that category. We shoot for small businesses or smaller businesses. They're usually not things that require licensing in my eyes. I think it adds a level of complexity that you also can't police. So as an example, I've seen brands before. And in fact, I've had one bad experience where the model that I was shooting with had some licensing things around their modeling, which is fair enough. And I can appreciate that a bit more because that's kind of their face being used in one brand, and they might not be able to then work with a different brand because of that. But essentially, this brand had agreed that it was for a online catalog, and in the end, they ended up using those images printed on all these pop-up banners at trade shows, and like it was everywhere. And I had a bit of a go at them and said, like, guys, you've agreed with the model that this is for one campaign. Now you've made them your hero pinup person, and like that's not okay. I said, from a photographer's perspective, I'm not as fussed, but I've now got a model who will never work with me again because they feel betrayed when it wasn't my call to do that. So that's probably my only experience in the licensing space. But what I look at, my business model or pricing model is actually really, really, really simple as advice. And I think it will naturally find its own groove beyond this. When you're starting out, I encourage people to think about what do they want to earn a year. If you're happy to earn $100,000 a year, great. That's your number. If you're happy to earn $200,000 a year, that's your number. Whatever that number is, you need to have a number because you're going to be coming from some sort of employment elsewhere. You need to go, well, what do you need in your life to live with? Knowing that, of course, things will grow, but that's your baseline. Then you've got to work out roughly how many days a year could you feasibly work, because it's not 365, I've learned.
And I'm sure you've tested that based on what I've seen.
So what we end up doing is you then divide it by, the number that you had, of course, add things like GST, superannuation, all that other junk that goes on that maybe people don't really see. Keeping in mind also you have to pay tax. I know there's been a lot in the media recently about, sole traders surprised they had to pay tax at the end of the year. Like that's a thing. It's pretty easy.
It's that influencer market. Jesus.
Yeah. Like,
pretty easy to work out what your tax rate is. Like these are really simple calculations, and that'll actually give you an end of year financial number. That should be your goal number. Then you go and divide that by the 52 weeks in the year, or 48 if you want to take some holidays. And then you work out per day, and then you work out roughly on a daily basis how many hours can you actually be working, or how you're going to structure it. I like to structure things as either they're half days or full days, because charging for an hour or two means it's rooted up the rest of my day. I can't charge 6 clients 1 hour a day. That's not really going to work. So it's either half day or full day, and that will give you your rate. Screw what the industry's doing. I don't care what the industry's doing, because some people in the industry are wildly experienced and have way more skill and talent than me, and I can't measure my skills against them. Some people are total hack jobs, and I'm not going to measure myself against them. You don't know what they offer from a relationship perspective, a helpfulness perspective, an end product perspective, or maybe the end product is probably the only thing you maybe can measure. And even then it's very, very kind of, smoke and mirrors. Work that out, and suddenly you've got yourself a full-time wage. Yeah. Now that's your goal. That's what you got to start chasing, rather than looking at it the other way around and going, oh, wow, if I charge this much and I do this many projects, this is what I'll earn. Think about it the other way around. Like, this is a real job. It should have a wage. That's what the wage is. This is how much you got to make. And now you've got a goal to chase, and that's where the hustle starts, you know?
So, okay, how does editing and stuff, post-production, fit into your rate? So basically, let's say Lucky Strap says, hey, Matt, need you for a half-day shoot. So you build your everything into that half day. You would give me a price. You'd be like, hey, that half day is going to cost you $86,000. I'd be like, geez, Matt, sounds like a good deal.
Yeah,
and then me as the client, I would
hang on, you were only going to charge me like $20 an hour to photograph the products.
Well, it didn't include post, obviously. That's where the post-production comes in.
He's got me.
Later. Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's exactly right, though. This is the simplification, isn't it? Like if you're a client, like put yourself in my shoes. Oh, sorry, put yourself in the client's shoes for a second. Lucky Straps wants to get some promotional shots done. Now, the reality is you want to hire someone, let's call it for a full day of photography because, you know, you want to do lots of different shots of people climbing mountains and doing all sorts of stuff with your straps. The moment you have to ask the question, how many images will I get? That to me says you don't trust the photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does it matter how many you get? Like at the end of the day, you'll get what you get. You'd rather get quality rather than getting just everything because I have to make up a number. I mean, if the lighting conditions are great, we'll probably get 1 billion shots. If the lighting conditions are average, we'll get enough to get us by and make sure that you feel like you've got value. But we're not going to go and shoot more stuff just to fill a quota. That's ridiculous.
But so this day rate, let's call the day rate for interest's sake, and hopefully it's probably somewhere in the ballpark of commercial photography on a small scale for small business these days. Let's say the day rate's $2,000.
Okay.
That gets you edited images. So let's say it was either going to be, you know, we had tough lighting conditions and a lot of setup. So we got 10 finished images, or we had epic lighting conditions and everything was just kind of happening, a lot of shooting going on. There's 250 images. You would deliver either, like the editing, it's just you win some, you lose some. If you have to edit 250, you'll edit 250 and the client doesn't pay extra. You're just like, hey, that was the rate we agreed on and I got all these great shots. Here they are.
Keep in mind that my editing for commercial, I don't do like, you know, product photography where you have to touch everything up to a T. Like I don't pull it into Photoshop and go through that whole rigmarole. I'm a Lightroom editor for most of my projects.
Me too.
And so most of the stuff that I would find myself shooting personally, they are things that I could very easily, you know, edit one photo up, copy, paste the edits across, and then go through each of them and probably spend 1 minute doing a quick masking job or a quick touch-up job. So it might take me 2 hours, 3 hours to edit it. But to be perfectly frank with you, you're earning $2,000 a day doing commercial photography and you're probably only working for 8 hours that day. You're earning $220 an hour. I reckon you could sacrifice 2 hours to edit some photos. I think you'll be fine. Whereas I think that's where that type of culture comes from a bit, where I see people going, oh, but I've got to edit for 2 hours. And I'm like, step back and think about what you charged them 5 seconds ago. Because the client that you're working for, they're not earning $2,000 a day. Generally, you're talking to someone who's in marketing, who's got a really strict budget. They're probably earning $100,000 a year, and they're seeing you walk around. In their mind, they're like, "You must be on $700,000 a year, right?" Charging.
They do the maths. They're like, "Hang on, 5 days a week, 48 weeks a year. Holy!"
Yeah, you're trying to charge them for a couple of emails and some extra editing. Like that's so illogical. I mean, what's one way to make someone feel like shit is to put that in their face. So I think that the case here is that you're buying an end product. There's no hidden fees and charges. You do this. Trust me, I'll get your job done. And if I give you 10 images, it's not because I'm lazy. It's because that was the best we could do with that day. And the days that you hire me and we get 250 images, just count your stars that you got an amazing bargain that day. And you know what? That relationship will be nurtured and go on forever.
Yeah. I completely agree. That being said, just briefly, I am a Lightroom editor. I'm very similar to you. But there have been times where extra attention has had to be paid for an image. With that, what I would normally do with a client is say I'd send them the 250 and say, hey, here's all the images. I think they turned out great. If you plan on using any of these for the side of a bus, let me know and I'll give them a quick once over just in case. Does that make me look bad as a photographer that they all aren't ready for the side of a bus? Or is that a legitimate way to kind of be like, hey, you know, like I can't spend an hour on each photo because there's 250 of them, but I just want to double check if you plan on blowing this up enormous for some sort of thing. How would you approach that? Or do you ever approach that with clients?
No, that's sort of, you know, once those images are handed over, I hand them over at the highest res that I can. Are there things I might do to a particular image if it was going to be a hero image? Maybe, but also it's not my brand going on the side of that bus. If they've chosen to do that, they'll probably put it through their own graphics team, you know. That would be my approach, to be honest.
So you never have that conversation with them or whatever. You just deliver it, and in your mind, if that gets used for something massive, well, you're happy with that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have given them that image.
Exactly. And like, the other thing is that they're not going to choose a crap image. And if they choose a crap image, well, that's obviously
sometimes they do.
That doesn't reflect on you. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be blasé about it, but that doesn't affect you at all. You are a photographer. You shot this stuff. As long as you're proud of what you've delivered. I mean, I wouldn't deliver an image that I don't like or I think's rubbish. They might choose the wrong image for the wrong campaign, but you're not their marketing team. You're the photographer who shot for their marketing team. So knowing your place in this industry is pretty important as well. Just because you don't believe in what they're doing or how they're doing it, that doesn't mean that you know more. That's up to them how they want to position themselves.
They've paid for that right, haven't they? They've paid for the right to do what they want with the image within reason.
And that's why I don't believe in the licensing thing, really, in my level of photography, because they've bought my time at a good rate and I've delivered them a product at a good rate. We have an agreement. That was the agreement. That image is now theirs. I don't think it's not something I have the right to go and on-sell to a different client now. I mean, they didn't commission it. So I don't see the point in holding, I hate that whole discussion around who owns the image. It doesn't bloody matter who owns it, really. At the end of the day, you shot it for someone. In good faith, you gave it to them. If they use it for what they use it for, that's how they used it. Unless they put it up on a billboard saying Matt's a shit photographer, see this image. That's an exception. But outside of that,
but then it's your lawyer's problem.
Yeah. But it's never going to be your lawyer's problem. It's going to be a problem that you're going to beat yourself up over, probably completely ruin a relationship, and no one's going to win. I just say expect that that's how people operate in this world, and you might not like it, but if you go into it with that expectation, you're not going to get upset about it.
Yeah.